while I think it's great that people are more engaged in the discourse, one of the things that is top of mind concern for me is this technological divide and the disparity between people who have access and people who do not. The people who can engage in this type of communication, conversation, the people who can dissent and the people who cannot.
Welcome to Socially Conscious AI, where we showcase innovative AI applications for social good and interview experts and thought leaders shaping the future of AI, with a focus on ethical and inclusive practices. I'm Valencio Cardoso. I'm here with my co-host, Roman Burkott. Roman, how's it going?
It's going great, Val. I'm thrilled to welcome our friend Dai Li. She's an AI ethicist who contributes to responsible AI development internationally. With expertise in human-centered AI and human-computer interaction, she leads research impacting standards for human AI workflows and assists organizations in creating frameworks and tools for responsible AI practices. As a technology innovator, Google Women Techmakers Ambassador, and CES Innovations Awards judge, Dai fosters conversations on ethical AI, aiming to develop technology that addresses human challenges and respects human autonomy. Dai, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I always joke about this, but whenever I hear an intro like as such, I feel like there needs to be a walkout fight song.
What's your song?
Without being cliche, I think it might have to be the intro to Pokemon. You know, the one that goes, I want to be the very best. Like the whole theme of it is working hard, right, to achieve this dream. And we never actually see him become like the Pokemaster, but it's just the story and the lore that makes it so compelling. So yeah, Pokemon theme song. But thank you for having me.
Well, we appreciate you on the show and sharing your perspective. Would you mind just sharing your journey into responsible AI and what initially drew you to this field?
Yeah. How wild is it, though, that I get to even answer this type of a question? Because 5 years ago, I don't think my role existed as an avenue for product or UX people. I got my start as a UX designer designing for video games. And although when people think about artificial intelligence, they think about ChatGPT and iRobot and so forth, the study of artificial intelligence has been around for many, many years. And way back when, for video games, when it was branch trees and choose your own adventure type things, it was called GoFi, good old-fashioned AI. Then I jumped into robotic, and while I was conducting UX research in Japan and China, I was looking at the implications and the emotional, psychological, and work efficiency impacts when you deploy automation onto an unknowing populi, and especially one that may not have technical experience or literacy towards the type of technology you're deploying. And the findings of that really just threw me on my head. It made me rethink the way that we approach the delivery, the creation, the discussions, the way we conduct market research and UX research about technology, how diverse we are when we start having conversations about technology. And especially with an AI lens, I started growing that fire in my belly, as other responsible AI enthusiasts would say, that grew into this really passionate concern around wanting to make more people aware of this. And I guess in a way, I would say, anytime someone asks me, what does it mean to be an AI ethicist? What do you really do? I go, I spread propaganda about responsible AI development. I get on soapboxes to spread that propaganda about ethical AI development. And I appreciate this opportunity to stand on another soapbox today to talk about that.
I think anyone who's an AI ethicist is spreading social good propaganda. But from your perspective, what does an ethicist do?
The role itself is very different depending on the background you came into it from. Like an applied research scientist may be looking at the ethical implications of model outputs. I look at things from a human-centric lens. As this industry is evolving, various terms will emerge and the language is changing with it. Ethical AI looks at the moral implications of AI. It looks at it from human values, what are our morals and the societal impact. It looks at research. It raises open-ended questions and engages with research in the realm of human values and those morals. On the other hand, responsible AI takes a pragmatic approach where it draws those insights from that ethical research and all of the philosophical musings, and then in those ethical evaluations, it tries to create principles, frameworks, best practices, guidelines around how to build AI systems that are deployed in a manner that aligns with those ethical considerations. And then now my favorite, my absolute favorite, human-centered AI. And any designers in the audience will know, like, human-centered design is a long-standing lens of thinking that came from engineering and then came into UX, but human-centered AI, in comparison, goes beyond ethical and responsible AI approaches, and it places this strong emphasis on designing AI in a way that prioritizes the needs, the well-being, and the values of people using the technology. It involves, and this is the slight nuance that's so different but makes this practice so beautiful, is that it involves understanding and addressing human aspirations, human capabilities that might change from person to person, those that might identify with different abilities that might be viewed as a disability in other scenarios, but in specific use cases may make them shine and thrive. And it also looks at the limitations around AI. So we jump beyond this, create something that's intuitive and inclusive, but let's also create technology that is beneficial to people and respects who they are as individuals, their autonomy.
So that's clearly a vast area of interest and consideration. Right now, halfway through 2024, where are the fires? What's the fire you need to run and fight?
Oh, let me tell you what is setting the chat group among my peers ablaze today. And it's the recent update to Adobe's terms of service, where I'm oversimplifying, but they basically made a statement, and the adjustment was that they could use content created using their tools as training data for their AI. The reason why this sets people in arms is that there is a lot of contention around AI being used to create art, and it's not protecting creative rights. There's a ton of privacy, IP, just contentious, strong, rightfully strong feelings around using generative AI for art. And now Adobe, one of the biggest platforms that creatives from every sector of content creation practice, from film to podcasts to advertising to scientific exploration and visualization to photography, everything, to say, hey, we're going to use your content as training data for AI. I'm going to quote my colleague directly. My colleague said, it feels like a slap in the face to the community that built you. I think that that's just one example, and it boils down to something that we've seen time and time again, is this respect of human autonomy. And when I say human autonomy, I'm not just talking about basic human rights, but I'm talking about, your autonomy to choose and hold the keys to your data, owning the ownership of your own identity, understanding what your data is being used for. So many things around that spectrum.
I totally agree with you there, because as we create things, as we solve certain problems, we create new problems. And I think companies need to be more responsible when they are thinking about how they're applying some of the technology that they're developing.
The silver lining to all of this is that there are more people today that I see engaged in this global discourse around AI impact than I ever have before. And I was in responsible AI and responsible automation practices well before, before ChatGPT, before that November of 2022. Even with classification models and recommendation systems, there were ethical implications. But people didn't really feel I didn't get that sense of urgency that exists now with how people are starting to value human ingenuity and start to protect what they deem is valuable to us as individuals and as a society, as a culture. Roman, you asked, what is top of mind? It's 2024. What are the fires? While I think it's great that people are more engaged in the discourse, one of the things that is top of mind concern for me is this technological divide and the disparity between people who have access and people who do not. The people who can engage in this type of communication, conversation, the people who can dissent and the people who cannot. It's not that long ago where we were seeing kids outside of a Taco Bell and Starbucks trying to gain access to Wi-Fi so that they can complete their schoolwork. So yes, there is a free version of ChatGPT for now. Yes, there are free versions of models for people to use for now. But I think we often forget that internet is still quite a luxury, privileged tool, even though it's a lifeline and almost everyone needs to be online just to function, apply for work, and do basic things in modern day culture, that not everyone has it.
Yeah, I think accessibility is key. People need that access to technology so that they can figure it out for themselves, how it could benefit them.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think you kind of touched on earlier is responsibility and responsible automation. But on the flip side, when we talk about automation, we're talking about like taking away jobs, right?
Yes. Unfortunately.
What's your perception of how like AI is shaping the landscape of jobs today?
Okay. I forgot what year the washing machine, the dishwasher, became prevalent in society and available for everyone to purchase. But it's one example that when dishwashers started getting advertised, so-called dissenters would put out advertising and like full page warnings in newspapers saying that like dishwashing was a part of the moral fabric of American families. And if you automated that, when would families talk to one another? And so I think about points in history whenever we had automation where a certain type of role changed and new roles that emerged. It is a trend in our history to be concerned, question the pace of technology, question what's being built, but also have apprehension around what happens to specific sectors of jobs. But I will recognize, and I do recognize, and this is why I became an ethicist, is that we've never had a technology, like this type of technology we're working with is unprecedented. So on one hand, it would be naive to not recognize that certain roles may be entirely gone. But also, 5 years ago, my role didn't exist either. There are many roles that didn't exist. I had a friend that transitioned into a linguist role to become like a data analyst for generative AI. But these are still very technical roles in the tech sector. So there are new roles that are going to take place. There are roles that are going to be omitted just by the nature of technology advancing. I think where the question and like where the investment needs to take place now is preparing a population on working with this type of technology. I think the biggest disparity in the future is going to be between those who know how to work with AI, can use AI, familiar with AI to some degree, and like those do not. Sadly, I don't think there's not a value judgment on my side one way or another, whether you choose to or you don't. It's just for this next initial phase, we're at this disruptive event horizon of roles completely changing, and it's just a matter of fact that companies are placing values on these types of skill sets.
I was just having this conversation with my family over the weekend, how the steam engine put a lot of people out of work, but before too long, all those people were now just working on steam engines, and how 25, 30 years ago, not that many people worked on the internet. And now a huge portion of our GDP is driven by software and web-enabled technologies. My perspective has been that AI disruption will have a lot of the same trend, that will go from nobody works on AI now to everybody working either on or for AI
Or
in the not
with,
future, or with, yeah.
or with.
Um, but I am curious whether you see it as being just another technological revolution as we've seen before, or is there something about AI and its scale and its speed that is genuinely different and something to, you know, I'll say worry about, or probably a better word would be manage, something that we
Yeah.
need to manage to.
Not to get all dystopian first, I see it more akin to the Industrial Revolution. We're
Mhm.
following the Industrial Revolution. During the Industrial Revolution, the advancements that took place, yes, did benefit society as a whole. Down the road in history, you can see the people that clearly benefited and grew generational wealth from it, while others were still left suffering or just not benefiting from it in immediacy. So when I think about AI, I think about how, on one hand, it has enabled people like florists, teachers, healthcare workers, customer service success people, people from all sorts of industries that didn't have access to this type of capability before because it was usually privy to practitioners, researchers. I mean, even think about us in the line of work that we do. We didn't even engage this intimately with the technology in the past 5 years. So I think the change is going to be disruptive. It's going to be chaotic, and we're going to see a bigger divide between people access, growth, and to some level, income disparity. But where I find hope and a silver lining that I've seen is that there are people that have been able to grow businesses out of this capability as well. People that have been able to change the way that they approach work. And this is where I think the creative thinkers are going to thrive in this type of landscape because they will see a capability like a chat interface to generate text, videos, pictures, and whatnot. And they'll be able to create applications, experiences, and tools that we didn't even know we needed.
Well, let's touch on skills for a second. What do you feel like or common skills should people be developing or you think will be crucial in the near future?
I say this as a joke, but there's great truth to it. I find that the people who are expert Googlers that understood the system flaws of Google, lending to ads first and random content that you don't want to see, and the people who knew how to gamify and defy search engine optimization by adding things like find me this Reddit so that they pull up a Reddit thread instead of a bunch of I think the expert Googlers ended up becoming really great prompt engineers for ChatGPT. They were able to give instruction with specificity and garner the results that they're looking for. So I think one of these skills that will be very important going forward, especially because we're still in an age where the engagement and interface to AI is still limited to a chat interface, is working on composing and strengthening language and instruction skills, being much more clear and precise in the things that we say and our intentions. I also think creative thinking, creative thinkers will look at a use case and be able to think of multiple applications of how to use certain capabilities. I think creative thinking is something that you need to practice and work on to be able to expose opportunities in your life in order to use artificial intelligence in a meaningful way.
I think you had mentioned before, right, when we're talking about the industrial age, where there was a bit of a dip with this new technology for people to transition from one way of working to another way of working, right? And I feel like some of this responsibility for this transition to soften the landing for people lies on organizations and educational institutes. How do you feel like they could potentially better prepare people for this evolving landscape?
Fortunately, it's not all doom and gloom. I work with the Data Science Alliance, a consortium of different people from different companies, different practices. You have data scientists, applied research scientists, students, um, enterprise executive level individuals, schools, academia, researchers coming together to create further propaganda about responsible data science practices and test these practices when used in a real life application. So, for example, they partnered with the San Diego Food Bank to use AI data science in order to increase food equity and where areas might be more food scarce than others, while applying responsible data science principles and seeing, okay, does it work for a real world use case? So I think there needs to be more organizations that want to do that, and not just for altruistic reasons. Like oftentimes when I get into these debates with colleagues or peers, they say, Di, you can't expect a corporation to just engage in altruism and, be concerned about society when they answer to shareholders and board members. And I often will say it back. How many companies have we seen the downfall of because they lost the trust of the public? I think the court of public opinion still is one that companies and large organizations fear the most. So I hope that people know they do have a voice and what they think and how they feel absolutely matters.
So you've got a background in robotics and automation and robotic co-work. And as we all know, robotics displaced a lot of jobs. Then there's the automation that comes through AI. And I think that was a lot of what was upsetting to knowledge workers, was seeing large language models doing what was perceived as creative work, diffusion
Yeah.
models doing creative work. So whereas a computer doing data analysis, I'm like, oh, well, it's a computer. That's what it's for. It should be good at that. But when I see it doing things that seem at least creative, that feels very unsettling. Drawing on your experience in robotics and automation, comparing that to AI-based knowledge work automation, how do you see the healthy balance between the human worker and the power that AI can also either provide or replace?
When I was working in robotics and now when I'm coming into AI, whenever people ask like, Di, what do you hope for the future of AI? I'm like, I hope AI becomes like a toaster. I say a toaster because when you think about a toaster, it's like a tool, has a function, it's very useful. In the nuts and bolts of a toaster, you have a very regulated and rigorous manufacturing process. You have standards. You have very rigorous checkpoints and a lot of eyes, hands, and policy that came together before that toaster ever reached your house. And that is what I hope for AI. We are largely in a place right now where outside of the European EU AI Act and GDPR and some of the more global scale type policies, at least in the United States, a lot of AI is kind of unregulated. I mean, we put out the White House executive order, but it's not very much policy. It's more of a guideline, like you should do this. We are entering a space where it is going to become more standardized and a little more regulated, but we're not quite there yet. Knowing that, where I think we need to balance is we need to have a real tough discussion with our company leaders and with each other at our work and even with our peers on what we deem as valuable at a company. What is valuable output? Because ultimately, I think if you talk to a worker, they would love if AI or a collaborative robot, a cobot, could automate a lot of the day-to-day enterprise or like corporate bureaucracies that we have to deal with just by sheerly existing in an enterprise organization. I cannot tell you the amount of forms that I've filled redundantly or how many times I've gone to a doctor's office providing resume level detailed information of my history via paper just to state it again with my doctor. Like, there is massive areas of entropy in everyday processes that don't involve replacing a human at their role entirely. And I think right now, a lot of organizations and companies, because they're in their infancy of integrating AI, they look at it in a myopic way where the easy grab in terms of understanding value and performance is how much does this person make an hour? Okay, if I omit that, I save this much. But they're not really using the bigger capabilities, the data analysis, the creative correlations that AI can make in looking at, okay, well, actually, if this person was spending less time doing expense reports and more time doing this higher value task instead, it would actually benefit the company more. And something I found in robotics was that while people had an apprehension and there's tremendous attitudinal barriers to automation, there were sectors of business and industries where there was high turnover, or because it was an undesirable role, or there was a high risk to physical harm, so robotics is needed for that specific role. There just isn't the population in certain places to support a specific industry. So they needed to bring automation and robotics to it. And I think there's so much that is untapped potential of the AI we had yesterday, even pre-ChatGPT, that with what we have now, there's so many problems we can solve before we even start talking about eliminating people.
That's a great point to end off the show. Di, keep up the great work that you're doing in pioneering the field.
I will provide your audience with a list of reading materials and resources all free of charge, so that they can learn about generative AI, learn about what responsible AI is, how they can get involved, things that they can partake in, organizations that they can align with. And I truly think, and I say this to both of you all the time when, we talk outside of here, that we need more people, we need more representation, and we need more diversity in development and in the discourse around AI. So I would love to share that with your audience, like courses on how to get started, like avenues where you don't have to be a technical person to get into the field of AI.
We'd really appreciate that. Where can people find you online? Where's the best place to connect with you?
They can connect with me on LinkedIn. I also have a TikTok. I'm apprehensive to say that because if you are my coworker, I will block you. But if you yes, let's talk about fashion or video games on TikTok.
And then are there any projects that you're currently working on or that you want to share with people out there?
Yes, I'm currently working with the Data Science Alliance. I mentioned, there's such a worthy organization. We constantly put out white papers. I have a couple speaking events coming up as well, and I can share that. And it'll be in the description box below. And also, on a last note, please don't forget to like and subscribe to these amazing humans. They're out here having such incredible conversations, and I'm such a big fan of your work. And I'm so proud of what you guys are doing.
Likewise. Thank you, Di.
Yeah, that means a lot coming from you. All right. Well, thanks for joining us for the Socially Conscious AI podcast with our amazing guest, Di Li. If you enjoyed the episode, please make sure you subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And why not share this episode with someone who could benefit from this conversation? For Valencio Cardoso, I'm Roman Burkott. Until next time, stay curious, stay conscious.